The story that stuck out to me the most was, it was like a scene straight out of The Godfather, was how your brother-in-law was executed. Are you okay to take the viewers down that path first, please, Anthony?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, it's a big part of my story. I mean, it changed my life, actually. Not at that time, many years later, actually, it changed my life. Yeah, you know, my brother-in-law, Frankie, his nickname was Kiki. He was a tough kid. You know, he was from the neighborhood. His parents came from Italy. He was an armored truck robber. He had a partner named Peter Siccara, who was also another dangerous kid. And, you know, they were mobbed up. They did some time for armored truck robberies. They committed a few homicides together. And they were two dangerous kids. And my sister started dating him. And at that time, when she started dating him, Danny Marino, who was a captain in the Gambino family, came to see us and advised me that to have my sister not socialize with him because he's a bad kid, and tell my sister to stay away from him. So I told my mother and my sister what Danny said, but my sister, she didn't want to hear it, and she continued dating him. And eventually they got married. He introduced her to drugs. They started doing some drugs together. And like I said, he was a dangerous kid. So then at one point, my sister became pregnant, and they had a baby. I was actually in treatment at the time because I had a little problem with cocaine, and I was addressing my issues. I was in a treatment center, and my sister had a baby shower, and the next morning I called up my wife, who lived upstairs, because we lived upstairs from my mom. My mother lived on the first floor and I was on the second floor. I called up my wife to see Alice, to see how the party went. And she says to me, "You don't know what that son of a bitch did. I heard screaming last night and I ran downstairs. He was choking your mother. She was on the floor." And I said, "What do you mean he was choking my mother?" And she says that he ran up a bar tab for like $700 or $800 after my mother had already paid for the party. And when the owner gave my mother the bar tab, my mother said, "What is this for?" And he said, "Your son-in-law was buying everybody drinks and he told me to give you the check." So when my mother got home, he confronted her and he attacked my mother, and my wife had to jump on him. She scratched his face in a whole big scene, and then he ran out of the house. So I was, like I said, I was in treatment. So when I got out of treatment, I went right to see my father's partner, Tony Lee, who was a made member of the Gambino family. He was my father's partner because my father was in prison. And I went to see him and I told him, "You know, this Frankie beat my mother up." And he says to me, "I know." Just like that, he went, "I know." I said, "What do you mean you know?" I said, what do you mean you know? What are we going to do here? And he said, "We're going to kill him." And, you know, and that was fine because that's the life that we lived. And I said, "All right, you know, so what are we going to do?" He said, "Well, you're going to have to go to visit your father and get permission from your father. He has to okay it because we're going to put it on record because, you know, Dominic's going to do it." He wanted Dominic to get credit for it because Dominic was proposed and I was proposed. It's funny how in the mob there's protocols to commit a murder. I mean, because it's a sanctioned thing, it's work, it's part of what you do. So you have to get permission, you have to put it on record, it has to go to the boss, and the boss eventually has to okay it, because if they don't okay it and you do it anyway, then you know your life on the line, because you know homicides bring heat and it's a whole big procedure. So the first step was I had to go visit my father. So I went to visit my father and I told him what happened. And he says to me, "What does he think, I'm dead?" So I said, "No, he don't care. You know, he's a bad kid. He just don't care. You know, I don't know what he thinks." So I told my father what the plan was and he said, "Do it." And he okayed it. So I went back to New York and I told Tony Lee my father okayed it. And at that point, Tony Lee sent for Jeannie Gotti, who was a captain at the time of the Gambino family. And we told Jeannie what happened. And Jeannie said, "Okay, I'll go tell my brother." And he went to John, who was the boss, John Gotti. And the next day or a day later, Jeannie came back and he told us his brother okayed it. And his brother, you know, was very close with it. John was very close to us. You know, we have a different relationship with him. We knew him when he was a kid. He really loved my mother and he loved my father, of course. And So he okayed it, and then we put a plan together. And you want me to explain the plan?
Yeah, on this channel, we like to get as much detail as possible. Some of our guests, they say, I'm going to cut a long story short. And I'm like, no,
All right,
make it long,
I'll
make it long.
yeah, you know, like I said, he was a dangerous kid. It couldn't have been like we couldn't just roll up on him on a street corner and gun him down in the street like you see on TV. You know, he was a dangerous kid. He really had to be done. We had to really reel him in and make him feel comfortable because, you know, he was a killer. You know, he was dangerous. I mean, and so we put a plan in place where he was a thief. We knew he was an armored truck robber. Like I said, he was an armed robber. That was basically his thing. He was a thief. So we planned. We told him that Tony Lee knew of a safe house of drug money in South Ozone Park. We don't know how much money was in there, but we know that it's where the drug dealers keep their money. So we told him that, and then we told him Tony Lee wanted to explain it to him, and then we sent for this guy Tommy who had a boat, and after the murder they were going to take his body out on a boat and dispose of him in the Atlantic Ocean. So what happened was we told him about this score, that we had a safe house that had money, and Tony Lee wanted to speak to him. So I called him up the day before and I said, listen, Tony Lee wants to meet you tomorrow morning at Cafe Liberty. He wants to tell you what's going on with that situation I told you about. He says, all right. So that morning I picked him up. You know, it's funny, you know, when I talk about it, because actually it didn't even faze me back then, you know, like I picked him up and he came out of the house and he had shorts on and a t-shirt. And he got in my car, you know, we laughed, he kissed me on the cheek, hello, and, you know, and I'm sitting there with him and I'm driving this guy to his death, like, you know, like it was like the sun was out, it was a hot June day out, you know, he had shorts on and a t-shirt, and I drove him to Cafe Liberty, and when I pulled up, Tony Lee's brother, who was another soldier in the Gambino family, Mikey Gal, he was sitting outside waiting for us. And we got out of the car and I walked across the street, and Mikey got up off the chair and he came over and he hugged Frankie and he kissed him. Hello, oh, I'm happy to see you. Another guy knew he was going to die. And, you know, I wasn't nervous up to that point. I was pretty calm up to that point because my part in it was really important because I had to bring him there. So I had to stay like really calm, and I couldn't like let my hand be known, because if he had any kind of inkling, you know, like anything could have happened. So my job getting him there was to keep him calm and, you know, keep him, you know, so I got him there, and I didn't feel anything until I walked in the door and he was in front of me, and he walked in and Mikey was on the outside and the door locked from the outside, and the door closed and I heard Mikey lock the door. He didn't hear the door lock, but I did. And when I heard the door lock, I got a little nervous at that point, you know, I got a little nervous. And when I walked in, there was 3 people at the bar. There was a counter. It was this guy, Freddie, who later on became a soldier in the Gambino family. This guy, Dominic Pizzoni, Skinny Dom, who's now a captain in the Gambino family, and Tony Lee. And they had a dish with bagels on it and coffee, and they were eating bagels. And we walked in, you know, they all saw Frankie. They hugged him. They kissed him. Hello, we're glad to see you, this and that, blah, blah, blah. You want a bagel? And he said, no. And Tony says, all right, come in the back. I want to show you my garden. Because in the back of the club, Tony Lee had a big vegetable garden. He had a green thumb, Tony Lee. And so we went back there, you know, he took it was like a scene in a movie, really. He took a paper bag and he walked out into the back, and he was picking tomatoes and putting them in the paper bag and just talking to Frankie about how, you know, just bullshitting to Frankie. Not about anything important, just regular chit chat. And he put a couple of tomatoes in the paper bag, and he goes, here, bring these home, you know, for you and Francine, who was my sister. And he handed Frankie the bag. As we walked out of the garden, we got back into the back of the club, and as we were walking, Tony Lee grabbed Frankie by the hand and said, I want to talk to you. And I just kept on walking. And Frankie stopped, and I walked out to the front. And when I walked out to the front, I looked at Dominic, and I gave Dominic the nod. And Dominic reached underneath the countertop, and he took out a revolver, and he put it behind his back, and he walked into the back. And then I just heard pop, 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 pop. I just heard a couple of shots. And then I looked and I saw Frankie laying on the floor. And Dominic came out and he said, and he looked at me, he goes, this fucking guy don't want to die. And he put more bullets in the gun and he went back in. And then as I was looking, I saw Dominic just pop, pop, shot him a couple of more times. And then he came out and I worked in, my father had a big number office, like a lottery office. It was illegal, like a bookmaking type thing, but it was numbers. And I worked in the office during the day and we walked out and Tony says to me, just to go to work, make out nothing happened, go to work, and then I'll come see you tonight. And I left. I went to do my regular routine, and they took his body and they put it in a sleeping bag, which I had bought the day before, and they put him in the trunk of Dominic's car. So I went to work that day, and then a couple hours later, my sister called me to tell me Frankie never came home. Where is he? I said, I don't know. I dropped him off on the corner. He made a phone call, and I don't know where the hell he is. So I had to go by our house, and I went by our house that night, and his parents were there, and I actually took his father to go. I mean, this is how insane the mob is, right? I actually took his father that night to go look for him, knowing that he was in the trunk of the car. So I took him, and then the next day, I wasn't on the boat, but Tony, I knew that. The next day, they took him on this guy Tommy's boat, and they took him out into the Atlantic Ocean, and they wrapped him up, and Tony Lee punctured his lungs and cut open his stomach because they didn't want him to float up to the top, and they threw him in the ocean, and he's never been found. He hasn't been found. I mean, they never found his body. And then that was in '88, and then in '05, I got indicted for the murder.
All right, Anthony, we've got a few questions on this story then, because it is one of the most fascinating stories that's ever been told on this channel. I'm interested in getting a bit more detail. So when you're leading him to his death, how fine-tuned do you have to be into his senses, and how fine-tuned do you have to be to detect any slight little change in his attitude to what's going on?
Well, first of all, when I got in the car, I made sure he had no weapons on him, and he didn't. And how I knew that is because of the way he was dressed. He had just a little white T-shirt on with shorts on, shoes, no socks. So I knew he had no weapons on him. So that right away was good. Yeah, I had to be fine-tuned because I had to bring him there no matter what. I couldn't say, even if I picked up on something, I would have had to get him there and then had to some way let them know that something's up. But as long as I stood calm and I just act naturally, everything would go smooth. And I could tell by his expression, he underestimated me. That's what it was. And I knew that. I knew he underestimated. I knew he felt that I wasn't maybe, and then I'm not saying this, I'm not proud of it. I'm just saying, I think he didn't think I was capable of that because he thought he was a tough guy and everything. So I think he sort of underestimated me. So it made my job a little easier, if that makes sense. And so I know as long as I stood calm and just carried on a normal conversation with him, I had him. And that's what happened. And I had him and I brought him there and I walked him in.
Bruno?
Yeah, that was a very good question, Sean. I have a second part to that. So he had to know what he did, you know what I mean, prior. So by him being hypersensitive and you kind of giving him the, the laid back attitude, going on the boat, doing whatever you're doing, that had to make him feel a little more calm. But in your opinion, Anthony, he had to know what was going on at some point. And, he didn't give any type of, inclination that, he knew he was in some kind of trouble for what he did?
Well, I don't think what happened was my mother never told my father. My mother was scared of him. This is what happened. So there was more to the story than him just beating up my mother. Prior to him actually laying hands on my mother, he was shaking her down for money. He was taking her to the bank. There was other incidents that happened. So she was in fear of him, and she was in fear of him hurting us, me or my brother. So like after the incident happened, and I found out, my mother, I could see she was a nervous wreck. And at one point I told my mother, Ma, what's wrong with this Frankie? And she went, stay away from him. He's crazy. He'll hurt you. Just forget it. So she was in fear. So she never told my father. I think he just felt that we didn't say anything to anybody. I think he thought we were scared of him. He knew he didn't think my father knew, because when he first started dating my sister, his partner, Peter Sakara, told him, listen, this is Fat Andy's daughter. You better think about twice dating this girl. But that's what he did. He also dated, before my sister, Sonny Francise's daughter. He dated Michael's sister before this incident. And he dated Danny Marino's niece before this incident. So his pattern was to date wise guys' daughters or relatives, because I guess he felt that was a shell for him. So I think he underestimated me. I think he never realized my father knew, because of the fear my mother lived in. Because I'm telling you, he showed no inkling of where I was taking him. He was laughing, the way he was dressed, he had no weapons on him, and he walked in there with a smile on his face. So I think he just underestimated the whole situation and really believed that he had my mother wrapped up. And he knew Alice told me, but I don't think he thought I would take it any further.
Right, so I'm here in London with David Courtney, London OG. Whereabouts were you from originally in London?
I'm a South London boy. I'm Peckham, Campbell Green, Bermondsey.
Yeah.
They say in America, they call it the Black Quarter, because they separate South London by a river. North London, East London and West London are all on that side of the Thames.
Yeah.
We got Brixton, New Cross, Peckham.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're bandit country.
So you were born into the bandit lifestyle, were
I'm
you?
afraid so, yeah.
And how old were you when you started thinking, this is the way I want to go?
Personally, I don't think that you can start thinking that. I think you're actually born that way.
Right.
Yeah, you're born naughty.
Yeah.
Or you're not. Or if you're a girl, you're born that you like cock. And it doesn't matter if you married Brad Pitt, you'd still shag the chauffeur. You can't help it. You're just that way. And being born naughty is pretty much the same as that. So
yeah,
I was born that way. I found it quite natural as natural leader material. Yeah. I found that you could still be a criminal and laugh a lot, because laughing and the sense of humour was my big thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to walk around like that till day, looking angry and pissed off. You know, it helped keeping everything light-hearted and.
Yeah. What about in school? Did this start to show then?
Very much so, yeah. I was getting on with all the big kids. Yeah. I had a little bit of bottle and I was out robbing cars and factories and doing, I was up for everything to earn some money. Yeah. And at 13 and 14, I was most probably earning more than my dad. You know what I mean? I was out with the kids earning money. So at school, I never had no trouble because I hung around with all the big kids at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And how was that money being earned?
Through crime, petty crime at the time.
Yeah.
Petty crime, yeah.
So what were the first crimes that you did then?
Well, there was nicking cars and robbing factories and shops. And, anything that they said, like my mum and dad were scout leaders. Yeah, covered scout leaders. So I used to pretend I had a sponsored swim. I'd write out all the forms. Or we're collecting for the bottle packet in the tin. We're collecting food for the Biafra. You know what I mean? And go around there one day and get 50 barrels of food. We was all doing all different things. I was a late starter with the fighting thing. I didn't realise I was gifted like that until I was much older.
What made you realise that?
Having to actually do it.
Yeah.
Like coming unstuck one day where there was no way out of it. My jokes weren't helping. I didn't have a lot of big friends around me and I had to go and do something.
Yeah.
And I think it was the fear of getting hurt
right,
that made me pull something out of the bag that, wow, I didn't actually know I could do that.
Yeah. And someone threatened you then?
Yeah, it was a punch up that I was in the company of people that this fella with a big builder's belt on with hammers in it and screwed looked the scariest fucking thing in the world. You know what I mean? Big muscles and that.
Yeah.
I was a kid. I think I was 15. And he banged out two of the men that I was with and then turned on me. And I thought, well, I'm just going to get knocked out, smashed a bit, stabbed it with the hammer, or I've got to at least try.
Yeah.
And I was very good at it. So I thought, oh, wow. Yeah, that's quite cool.
Did it give you a feeling like you enjoyed it?
The most Neanderthal feeling in the world is knocking out another man. That's quite natural for anyone to actually be standing over someone in a boxing ring while you've knocked him unconscious.
Yeah.
And having 10,000 people going, die, mate. Right, hear me, that is sexual.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And it is the most natural thing in the world. Even gorillas today, they go, yeah? You know, it's, of course you felt good winning, yeah.
Yeah, because I had a mate growing up called Wildman, big guy, and he was just getting...
I find that very surprising that you had a mate, but carry on.
When you give drugs away for free, you attract a lot of mates.
Yeah.
And he just had a natural...
flair for it.
Yeah, flair for it, that's it, yeah. I recognise that in you.
And I think once you've lost a couple of fights, and you do actually realise that you can lose a couple of fights and get hurt, but you do actually get better 2 months down the line, and it doesn't matter and you're okay, that makes you not frightened of getting hurt.
Yeah.
And that is a really big thing in the finance world.
Yeah.
Once you don't mind getting hurt yourself, it makes you a prolific weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to lose a couple to realise getting knocked out is no big thing. You just a little bit of a sore jaw for the next 2 or 3 weeks, or a couple of days, and then you're away again. You know, I've seen people break their eye socket and all that, and then 8 weeks' time it's all mended and they're cracking on with it. But once that's happened to you a couple of times, you ain't frightened of getting hurt. That makes you a much better fighting man, and any boxer will tell you that.
Yeah.
You learn fuck all from winning a boxing match. Someone standing in a corner and you're going bam, 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 bam. You don't learn nothing from that. If you're trapped in the corner and getting pinged out, you get out of there going, I will never get trapped like that again.
Yeah.
Losing is educational,
And it makes you more confident in life as well, in karate.
Of course.
Doing lineups, I remember the first lineup, all the black belts are waiting, you got to fight them for like 30 seconds each. Shitting it the first time, broken ribs, cracked ribs, broken fingers, but you lose that fear then of getting hit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you got to get it.
So what took it then to the gun level with you?
As you got older, when the big kids that you're hanging around with are carrying firearms, then you progress with that. You get nicer cars, nicer clothes, nicer weapons, nicer women, bigger bank balances. In depending on what walk of life you're in, everything should go up a level every now and then. So if you're using a stick to hit someone on the head as a kid, and you're using a knife later on as a teenager, if you're going to carry on in that way of life, as you progress, you turn to firearms.
Would you say you was addicted to that lifestyle?
No. It's not the lifestyle. It's being a criminal is just a job.
Yeah,
it's just a job. It's like bricklayers don't come home with a trowel and build brick walls in the front room all day long, and I don't run around the kitchen with a gun going, make me a sandwich. It's tools of the trade on site when you're at work, and when you come home, you're just a bloke.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And crime is the same as going bricklaying. It's a lazy man's way of going to work. You don't have to do 8 hours a day for...
No taxes.
Yeah, of course. And it force feeds you into a way of life of you can spend more, you can go out more, because you don't have to get up for work in the morning. You don't have to save up, because when you run out of money, you go out and get another load. And it's different. You've got a different way of life. So you only people that are naturally good at that do the things like don't grass you up, don't run away and leave you when you're in trouble, stay loyal to their friends. People that just want that way of life, but they're not born into it, and they pretend to be. They're the ones that they go bodybuilding, they try and look like gangsters, they do that all the time.
Gangsteritis.
Yeah. And when the shit hits the fan, that's when you can tell how good a person you are in anything, especially the gangster world, the criminal world. And when the shit hits the fan, it's them the ones that go blah, 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 or run away when they've seen him get stabbed, and then they look at you. They would be the one to run away. Wouldn't enter someone like reel's head to go, I'll grass him up or I'll run away and leave you, or...
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
So how easy was it for you to get a guns back then? I can see it.
It's very easy, yeah. It's
no felonies in here.
It's a lot easier now.
Yeah.
It was quite easy then, depending on what walk of life you're in.
Right.
Yeah,
I can say... What years are we talking when you were first getting into the gun scene?
Late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
You know, when the rave scene first kicked in. Okay. All of a sudden, people are selling E's.
Yeah.
And whatever doorman was running the club was running the door of a 15,000 strong rave. You know, you was going home with a couple of $100,000.
Yeah.
Well, that's upped your level of violence, because that's worth actually robbing you for.
Yeah.
Doing a takeover bid for, or you know, having a little gunfight over who's got the right to sell that in there. That's a lot of money. No one had ever seen that before. You're used to £80 a night as a doorman.
Yeah.
Now you've got drug dealers giving you $2,000 to let them sell the stuff in there tonight, and you've got 10 of them in there doing that.
Yeah.
And that's worth fighting for. And if the people that's going to be coming to take over are carrying guns, I'm afraid my knuckle duster's no good anymore. I have to have firearms, and I have to have people around me that are prepared to use them, not show it or just getting hard on carrying it. You have to be...
It's an arms race.
Yeah, for real, yeah.
So what attracted you to going into the rave scene?
I went to America with Richard Branson, and I saw him when it was all acid. Yeah.
What year was that? 89?
Early, no, it's earlier than that.
Really?
And I saw him buying water.
Yeah, the water
and
sales.
What freaked me out. Because if anyone in when I was a young man, ever went into a pub and went, 3 Ribenas, a Lucasade, 4 bottles of water, and an orange juice, he'd get fucking beat up. Yeah? He would get beat up. You had light and bitters, double diamonds, like whatever. But he'd get beat up, and I saw him buying fucking water and buying 2 bottles of water for $2 each and drinking one and tipping the other one on their head. And I'm like, is this for fucking real? Like, the toilet ain't even got toilet paper. There ain't an ashtray in the whole club. It's a railway arch.
Yeah.
And they're buying fucking water off you because they've all had this pill. Yeah. Fuck, I couldn't wait to come home. I bought fucking 3/4 of a ton of empty Evian bottles.
Yeah.
Filled them up with water. Got them on Railway Arch at John Ruskin Street. Put them all the water in the fridge, and everyone that wants a bottle of water, when you have a bottle of water, they take the top off for you and throw it in the bin. Otherwise, the dance floor would be smothered in bottle tops. Right? So they didn't know it was just ordinary water at the tap, and I'm like going fucking £3 for me, £3 for me, like all day long, every day. And because it was illegal, you stayed up until 6. Well, all the clubs shut at 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
They've just made me, I can sell water now till 6 in the fucking morning. It comes out the tap. It comes out the fucking tap. Right, and they say there's not a God, yeah?
And you're not even breaking the law.
No, it's mental. And the only people you've got to look out for or worry about are in there going, acid. I was like, wow, stop it.
So how did you have it structured then? Did you like find a venue, throw parties, do the water,
well,
drugs are running through the house?
I had maybe one of the biggest teams of doormen in the country at the time.
Right.
Yeah. There is natural leaders and there is natural soldiers, and each one is as equally important to the other one. Good soldier needs a good leader. Good leader. The problem comes when a soldier gets in charge, or a leader has to be led by someone that ain't as good as him. Yeah, that's when it all falls to bits. But I found my little vocation. I had 700-800 big bodybuilding, flat-nosed skinheads working for me. Yeah. And I had all the clubs. I had the String Fellows, the Hippodromes, the Ministry of Sounds.
That's a lot of power.
Yeah, for sure it is, yeah. But I was looking at it, I was earning £15 a man per night.
Yeah.
And on the weekend, I had 800 working. You know, during the week, I had 400 working, but at the weekend, I was earning 800, 15 quid.
That adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah, without the money, just on the doorman thing.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to go and get their neighbour beat up or their daughter's boyfriend beat up for hitting her, or the car repossessed or squatters thrown out, they really don't know who to ask.
Yeah.
But every Friday night, there's a load of doormen over there, and they'd fucking know. So I became a massive, big job centre for people that wanted their neighbour to be disappeared. Can you get the squatters out of my house? Can you repossess a car? And I had 800 flat-nosed geezers all waiting to...
Yeah.
Have you got any other work for me, Dave, apart from Friday and Saturday night?
You had your own army, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was, yeah.
So did you try ecstasy?
Yeah, fucking hell, did I? Did I try ecstasy? Yes. I turned into the best fucking dancing fighter anyone had ever seen.
Dancing fighter.
I'm fucking telling you. It's not that I was the best fighter or dancer in the world, but I thought I was. I was the first bloke to moonwalk forward. Yeah, you know.
So how long was your run in that scene, and what happened next?
Oh, wow. What happened next is it made me infamous.
Okay.
I bought quite a lot of clubs.
Yeah.
All the doormen worked for me. I then ended up doing the Cratering funeral.
Wow.
I actually thought it was going to be the biggest smart move I've ever done in my life by showing the rest of the world my security men.
Yeah.
And after that, I was going to become a millionaire with security jobs. What it actually done is it brought Dave Courtney to the attention of the police and politicians.
Yeah.
And it was their very first visual proof of organised crime. One criminal has arranged all of these other criminals that normally are shooting each other, but on this one day, he's in charge and got them all coming down here doing the security thing, and criminals are supposed to have their collar up in the shadows, no pictures, no comment, and there we all were for 8 hours.
It was a surveillance weapon.
Yeah, they just went, what the fuck is that? Get rid of Dave Courtney and his little band of men. So the very next day, I'm now being called a celebrity gangster. What the fuck that is, I really do not know, yeah? Contradictory terms. It's like saying police intelligence, yeah? The two words don't go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just don't go. I'm glad you got that.
It's like Pablo Escobar was always low-key.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But now I'm doing not get a load of me.
Yeah.
So I just really got it wrong. Cratering connection destroyed me. So I went to every club I had a doorman and went, look, sack Dave Courtney and his doorman, otherwise you won't have a licence for a fucking television, you dickhead. So, and the magazines that I was working for, they went to the editor and going, you can't glamorise crime, sack him.
Yeah.
The television companies I was working for, they went, we're not having him on telly, sack him. And it's the police just destroyed my life. It just shut me down. Yeah.
What was your relationship with the Craze? Then just jumping back a bit, you mentioned the Craze funeral.
Well, I was running all the doors.
Yeah.
They were the Cratering, yeah. And they asked to come and see me, for me to come and see them. And I was living with a Jamaican lady who was a rapper. She had an identical twin sister, and they wrote a record about the two Cratwins themselves. Yeah. And the record was called "They Took the Rap," and they were rappers. And so they said, I said, I made the record, and they went, well, if you're going to make a lot of money from that record, boy, you better come and see me. I've heard you're running things out there. You better come and see me. So I'm like, fucking hell. So I then goes to see Ronnie and in Broadmoor and Reggie.
In Broadmoor, is that like the mental prison?
Yeah, it's a mental prison. Yeah. And Charlie became my friend, a lot of close friend. And so I then became their legs and arms for the last 20 years I was in prison.
Right. So what kind of stuff did they ask you to do then?
Everything, everything that you would imagine the Cratering asking me to do, I did, whatever they would have asked me to.
Yeah.
At the time, being a young, easily impressed fella, I went yes to all the things they asked me to. So,
right.
Everything that you can imagine them asking me to, I would do. I then became aware that that they were a spent force. Living on reputation. Yeah. And the real characters were nowhere near what you thought of in the myth.
They were out the limelight.
And the actual calibre of person wasn't what you wanted it to be. Nothing or no one is as big as a myth. Yeah, not John Wayne, not Al Capone, not Dave Courtney, not Ronnie Craig. No one is as big as a myth. Yeah. And but I was in it. I was getting on great because they were associates now of mine. So it was opening an awful lot of doors until the end. And then at the end of it, it became the thing that shut all the doors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They weren't running around showing off that they were both actual gays or they were both completely skint. Most of what they said was a lie. It was just a romantic myth. The only reason they had stayed mythical characters is because they'd been locked up for so long. Had they been let out, people would have met them and known them and gone, oh, they're not that, you know.
Yeah, still now in London, the talks about them and tours and stuff, isn't
Yeah,
there?
of course, yeah. But, you know, great. And they made it acceptable for people like myself to earn money out of your criminal past.
Yeah.
But once I'd gone all over the telly and the newspapers as a celebrity gangster, I needed to do something very public to prove that I'm not.
Yeah.
I couldn't do fuck all. I couldn't jump out of my car and go bang to the geezer in the car behind because everyone in England was going, that's Dave Courtney, I know him, I see him on the telly. I was fucked.
Yeah.
Well, and I was a debt collector. I could no longer kick a door down, run in, frame about and get the money.
Yeah.
Because he can go, it was Dave Courtney, I know him. Seen him on the telly, so I'll get nicked and go to prison, I'm fucked. So I quickly needed to, just as publicly as the Cray-Twin funeral, do something that took me out of the limelight. So I wrote that book, Stop the Ride, I Want to Get Off.
Dave's got 9 books out now, haven't you? Yeah. So you've described all this time so far. Have you got to this point in your life without doing any prison time?
No, I've done quite a few prison, but I've done all of my, not all, I've done some little sentences.
Yeah.
But I'm famous for actually getting not guilty. I've had 21 not guilties.
Teflon Don style.
I defend myself, right? I couldn't get my head round paying someone 150 grand to stick up for me in court when I can argue better for myself.
Yeah.
And if he don't argue well enough for me, I go to prison.
Right.
I'm not doing that. I'll argue
And
for me, thank
out.
you.
That worked
every
out
time,
for you.
yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
So what was the first time you had to do that? What were you charged with?
Oh, I don't know. I would always sit there and defend me. I can't stupid things, you know, calf, anything. I've been done for £5 million worth of cocaine importation, murder, attempted murder, grievous bodily harm, assault, a million different things. So what
was the murder beef then?
There's no beef to me. I'm all right.
And you beat that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So have you got any stories from your time inside?
I could sit here and rattle off stories for you, my friend.
Yeah.
You're going to have to narrow that down because every single day of my life...
You were probably running it inside, I imagine.
I'm not me. I'm not silly enough to believe for 1 second I am scary. The scary thing about me is my telephone. That's all. I don't care what trouble I'm in, what part of the country, what part of the world. If you let me get to my phone, I will fuck you, mate.
You've got your army right there.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's not me, and no more I'm a 60-year-old fat bloke. Yeah, but if you let me get to that, I'll fuck you. Whether you be Russian, Indian, Pakistani, Polish, Albanian, yeah?
Have you bumped any heads with the horror mafias?
Of course I have, yeah. I bumped heads enough to know that if I fell out with them, I'm going to come second. So they're all now my friends, every single one of them. Yeah, you know, they have a completely different level of crime and violence than people in England. I'm afraid human life is held at different importance in different countries of the world. Yeah. In England, it's held as maximum importance, but in Kosovo or Moscow or Kingston, Jamaica or Bosnia, human life or Afghanistan means that.
Yeah, where I was at in Arizona prison, they killed for $50 worth of heroin.
Right.
Yeah. So I saw you got run off the road or something. Is there a story behind that?
There is a story behind that. I've paid policemen all my life, and a certain policeman that I'd paid for 15, 20 years actually got caught. He actually got caught with me. And they filmed me and him up the top of the road talking. And when they actually arrested us, he went, "No, Dave's not paying me. I'm paying him." And I was like, "Really?" But I'd bugged myself.
Yeah.
I'd bugged myself, so I'd taped the whole conversation. So when he actually said that, I then went, "Okay, well, there's the tape." So they can either now, this is their decision, put him in prison and let me come out the hero. Yeah, let me come out the hero, write a couple of books about it. All of the people that had arrested, there's going to be fucking criminal compensation paid, you know, look bad. Or pretend that they believe him, call me a grass for 8 months and hope that someone shoots me before it gets to court.
Wow.
So that's exactly what they did. But my biggest day is I went to court, I got not guilty at the Old Bailey, and the couple went to prison. I still bang one off over that. I'm sorry. But if I ever can't get an hard on, I'll think of that. I don't think the women. My biggest day. Hear me. I went to court dressed as a court jester.
I saw that, the jester picture, yeah.
I had some photos in, but it's on television. I went into court dressed as a court jester and pinged the copper out, knocked him spark out in court. On television. Stop it, because I'm getting a little semi-hard on. Wait. It's going. Yeah,
So for people watching this who don't know who Joe Gambino is, how did he rise up? How did he get into power?
Well, Tommy Gambino's, it's a cousin, and Tommy Gambino was also in prison with me. He just passed away, natural causes. And again, Tommy Gambino was another guy, very wealthy, a businessman, a gentleman, didn't talk, didn't look for trouble, just did his time and very well respected. As you know, these guys aren't killers, they're just nice guys. And Tommy was Carlo Gambino's son, and Joe was a cousin. And they do correct time. You know, there's ways of doing time in prison, and there's guys that can do good time, guys do bad time. I mean, maybe, you know, listen, I give Jeannie a benefit down for one thing. He could have did 9, 12 years, him and Johnny Kinnick, when they sold heroin. And they took a 50-year bid on the chin out of stupidity because they listened to their brother John, his brother John Gotti Sr. They wouldn't allow him to take a plea where they would have did about 8 years. So if this is about looking out for your brother and looking out for your soldiers, you're supposed to tell him to take the 8. But instead, he was worried about his image, that they're selling drugs, and he made him do 50. So to me, that's not a leader.
Were the Gambinos bumping heads with any other crime families when you were an enforcer?
You know, listen, you always have disputes between families, but it's usually, for the most part, it's worked out by sitting down and having sit-downs and working out, because, you know, this life is not about killing each other. It's about making money with each other. And there's good relationships between all the crews. It's not what everybody thinks. The wars start like over the years, the wars started where guys were clipping our guys left and right because we killed Paul Castellano unsanctioned. Gotti caused that. And as our guys are getting killed one after another, we're not killing anybody back. So this is one of the reasons I said he was a soft leader. We're getting uncontested killings, and we're not contesting them. And there's wars during the Colombo days, wars because they split for factions within the family. And Joey Scopo Sr. was another nice guy. Senior Gotti put him in there to take over one faction. He got killed. We didn't do anything about it. But Joey was best friends with Jeannie Gotti growing up together. So that's why they put him in that position. But usually it's that the money situation's cut up properly. The unions are cut up properly. And it's everyday business is about any other business. It's about making money and without killing and without wars. But, you know, like anything else, guys step over the line, do the wrong thing. And in this life, you lose your life for that.
Did you just need sort of permission for taking a made man out?
To kill somebody? Do we need permission? Yeah, you're supposed to go from, listen, we all do it. I did it. You're clipping guys. Jimmy Burke and his son, Frankie Burke, had a situation. He told me it was for his father from an old heroin deal, and me and him went out in Brooklyn, and we killed 2 guys, and I did it with him. And he wasn't with our family. Jimmy got life already. Frankie was a good friend of mine. He's dead. He got killed too. But I went and did it unsanctioned. Frankie asked me to take the ride with him. I took it, and then, I did the work with him because he was a friend. But otherwise, if I get caught doing a piece of work, I'm supposed to be killed for it. I understood that.
Yeah.
You said we took Paul Castellano out. Were you part of that crew? And can you describe how he was taken out?
I wasn't part of the hit. I was a young guy, but I was privy to it. At the time, Senior again used his friend Angelo Ruggiano as a scapegoat because they got caught on tapes talking about selling coke. And Senior used the excuse of Angelo, and he shelves him later on. But he didn't shelve him. He actually promoted him after the Paul Castellano hit. So that story's bullshit too. He used that as an excuse to go hit Paul. And at the time, Paul had a couple of cases. It wasn't a sanctioned hit from the other families. And what it causes a big rift, but they hit Paul in front of Sparks Steakhouse. I think Sparks on 46th Street. I just did a show there last year. But when they hit him, there was a meeting there, and it was to discuss what was going on in the drug business and what happened with Jeannie and Johnny and these guys. And when he gets out of the car, him and Tommy Bellotti, there's a setup of guys to kill, to make sure Paul doesn't leave that scene. Backup car, it was a backup car at that time, was Sammy Gravano and John Gotti. And Sammy brought his gun, but John never brought a gun to that show. So this is the typical of really what goes on. And this is the typical why people hear me constantly speaking up for Sammy Gravano. And, so people understand at the time when I was being raised in the Gambino family, I wasn't particularly close to Sammy. I seen him once in a while, I said hello to him. And I even was chastised by Gotti Sr. at one time not to get too friendly with him. I didn't understand at the time. But I guess Senior didn't want me to get close to him because maybe eventually he wanted me to hit him, kill him if he wanted. So he didn't want me to have that feelings for him, so maybe I wouldn't do it. Or I would tip him. And, I wasn't schooled enough at that time. I was a young kid when I first met them. But I look at Sammy as I've said it over and over again. If he wasn't betrayed, it would have been a different era. He was betrayed, completely betrayed. And anybody who listens to the history and follows it, and forget about the United States, this is a different country. So maybe everybody would understand, listen, this guy got completely betrayed. He didn't do anything wrong.
We were in prison with it, so weren't we?
Yeah, so we had an ecstasy trafficking operation in Arizona, and Sammy the Bull was out there. That was their operation. And Wildman was on the chain gang one day with Gerard Gravano. Yeah, so Sammy got nailed a couple of years before us. So Gerard was telling us, all the prosecutor's tricks and all that kind of stuff. I've read his book, Underboss, as well. So I've come to be familiar with his side of the story. Before, just going back to Paul briefly though, is it true that he was in a replica of the White House, prancing around in his silk pajamas, losing touch with the foot soldiers? So that weakness was shown kind of.
I don't agree with that.
No? Is that
I mean,
myth?
listen, everybody's going to have their own opinion. I think he was, listen, Paul killed more guys as a boss than any of the other guys did, more than John. So,
wow.
And John didn't kill anybody with his own hand either. So that's bullshit if anybody knows the stories, because somebody just sent me a message again. I heard he did this. Well, you heard wrong. You're hearing bullshit stories. When they killed McBratney, he was there. He didn't kill him. They didn't even do it right. They couldn't get him out of the bar, and Galliano had no choice but to shoot him in the bar. He wasn't the shooter. But, listen, Paul was a big earner. So when Carlo handed it over, I don't think it was just because of family reasons. He understood the relationship with Genevieve's family. He understood the money relation and the power that money brought to the Gambino family. And these guys are businessmen. And so the idea is to make money. It's not to kill. I made a lot of mistakes because I was shooting a lot and killing a lot, but that was also my job for a lot of guys. So, as an organization, if you don't have to kill guys and you can make money, that's the idea. And Paul, I believe, was he was a strong leader. Guys will make the excuse he was greedy, he was taking money. Well, 99% of these guys are sheep. There's 1%, I've said it over and over again, of guys like me making money and killing. And you got some guys that just make money and then the other guys that just kill. But you shouldn't be straightening out all these guys because they're somebody's son. They've never seen a fucking day on the street.
If he's killing though and not making money, what's the sense in that?
Well, and that's the problem, because you got 98% of these guys are deadbeats. They ain't able to earn. They just follow you that makes money, or follows me that's killing guys and making money.
And you got to expect to pay.
Yeah, and so they're crying about Paul or somebody, but go out and earn.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you got guys like Gerard, I don't know him personally and meet him personally. I talk to him on the phone plenty of times, so people that know who he is. Gerard's Sammy's son, but he's also a gentleman. He's a quiet guy. He's low spoken. He's low key, and the father raised him right, actually. And and this is the point. A lot of these guys raised their sons. An example: Patty Catalano was a heroin mover, and his son opened his big mouth to me one day. He thought I gave a fuck who his father was. I tied him up. I put him on lighter fluid all over, and I beat him up, and I was going to put him on fire. I mean, no one gives a fuck who your father is. You know, you're going to respect somebody if you're a gentleman and if he's a tough guy. And if you're a tough guy and not being a gentleman, somebody eventually is going to kill you too.
So with Paul gone, the different factions of the Gambinos scramble for the leadership?
No, it wasn't scrambled. It was, you know, it was a coup, and Gotti had it arranged, and he awarded himself the position. But the problem is he wasn't capable to run in that position. He wasn't an earner. You know, I just recently did a show, and the guy asked me, "Did you know it was Gotti? Will you tell me you're a better earner than Gotti?" And I should have answered that a little different. I would say Gotti fucker couldn't earn 2 cents. Yeah, I was a 10 times better earner than him, but his guys were earners. There's a difference. His guys were bringing in all kinds of money from heroin, construction. He couldn't. He never made a penny from anything. Sammy made the construction money. Guys like Johnny Koenig made the heroin money. Guys like Mark Ryder. But John himself, you know, he wasn't capable. He was capable of running a gang. He wasn't capable of running a mob. And it was a big mistake, him coming into position.
So if Gotti actually never killed anyone, what gives him the right to take that position?
Because he had killers around him. He had serious guys around him. Guys like Johnny Koenig was a killer. Tony Roach was a killer. Willie Boy Johnson, although he was doing what John Gotti Jr. was doing, meeting the government queen of the day, informant, was a tough guy killer. You know, he had guys that were killers, no doubt. And that's what made him strong, because he aligned himself around some serious shooters and earners. But him particularly, if you follow the history of him when he was younger, he couldn't even hijack a truck right. So and that's the truth about the guy. But I give him credit for other things. You know, the guy maneuvered people. He did do that. He put himself in a position. He knew when to take opportunities. He took it. He surrounded himself with guys like Sammy Gravano and Frankie DeChico. You know, but when people see the history of this and they don't understand the mob, when they kill Paul Castellano, there's nobody to contest it. There's Peter Castellano, who's not a tough guy. He shows up 2 weeks later to play cards at our club because he's not a tough guy. The older guy is Joe Gallo. He's an old man. You know, Tommy Gambino doesn't want no part of that. He's a gentleman. He's a multimillionaire himself. He's not a gangster, a hardcore guy like that. He's just a nice guy. So who's going to contest this murder? He's got Frankie Loke in the Bronx on his side. He's got Frankie DeChico. So Gotti does make some right moves. He aligns himself with all the young guys that are tough and the guys that have the power, like Frankie DeChico and Sammy Gravano in Brooklyn and Staten Island and Frankie in the Bronx. Nobody contested within our family. The problem he was going to have is Vicar Musso with the Lucchese family and Gas Pipe and the Chin with the West Side. And these guys were going to hit Gotti. No doubt if he doesn't go to jail, he's going to end up dead. It's just a matter of time. And they blow up a car, and he's lucky he isn't in the car. It was the wrong guy was in the car. Was in the car. And guys are getting caught on tape. Bobby Manna gets caught on tape trying to hit Gotti, and Gotti's going to get hit. The FBI goes to his house once or twice and warns him. We got on tape. We heard you're going to get hit. Gotti acts like he's not worried about it, but he was very worried about it. And it was only a matter of time before they hit him. And because of the way he carried the media around him, it was so hard to get near him. And I think that's one of the things he purposely did. He understood the media around him is almost like having law enforcement around him, which law enforcement did come around him because of the way he behaved.
It's his blanket of protection, isn't it?
Yeah. And, so the media is for guys that are not active, not for an active boss.
Yeah.
And so he destroyed what Cosa Nostra was. When you talk about Andy Ruggiano, you're talking about guys don't even know who he is, right? You guys don't know who he is. Nobody knows who he is, but he was one of the most powerful bosses around our area. And Gotti just stepped into his position because Andy went to jail. Later on, he comes home, he gets sick, he dies right away. But these are the guys that, if you're going to make movies about or do shows about, it's got to be about somebody like him. Guys like Robert, Angles, people don't know who he is. He's a guy that got away from the life and he preaches now. But these are tough guys from the street that were quiet. And he never became a made guy, became an associate, but he was known, really known on the street. So you get guys like him and you look back and you say, if you're going to follow this life's about being quiet, making money, being a gentleman, just what you said earlier, and trudge along a little bit low key, and you can last.
Yeah.
When you go out like Gotti did, of course you're not going to last. You last 4 years. The public, looks at him because the media built something up that's really not true. That doesn't exist. but it's probably the single worst thing that happened to the Gambino family ever, that Paul Castellano getting killed.